In the distant future, humanity had finally earned a place among the stars. After centuries of struggling to survive on Earth, humans joined the Galactic Council, an alliance of advanced civilizations that governed the galaxy. It was a proud moment for Earth, but not everyone in the Council welcomed them. To many alien species, humans were still newcomers, inexperienced, and unworthy of their seat at the table. Rachel Monroe was one of the diplomats representing Earth. She was young, smart, and determined to prove that humanity deserved its place in the Council. Rachel had spent years studying alien cultures and languages, and she quickly became known for her sharp mind and calm demeanor. But behind her polite smile, Rachel carried a heavy responsibility. She knew that every decision she made could affect the future of her planet. One day, the Council called for a special meeting aboard their massive flagship station orbiting a distant star. The topic was sensitive: resource distribution across the galaxy. Many species accused Earth of consuming too much energy and raw materials, while others argued that humanity's rapid technological growth posed a threat. Rachel prepared carefully for the summit, reviewing data and rehearsing her arguments. She believed that diplomacy could solve any problem if given enough time and effort. As the meeting began, tensions ran high. Alien ambassadors shouted over each other, their voices echoing through the grand chamber. Rachel listened patiently, taking notes and waiting for her turn to speak. When she finally stood up, her voice was steady and clear. "We understand the concerns of our neighbors," she said, "but cooperation is better than conflict. Together, we can find solutions that benefit everyone." Her words seemed to have an impact. Some ambassadors nodded in agreement, while others fell silent. However, not everyone shared her vision. A faction within the Council, led by a reptilian species called the Krillians, viewed humans as a nuisance. They saw Rachel's speech as a challenge to their dominance and plotted to silence her permanently. Later that evening, Rachel stayed behind to review some documents in a quiet corner of the station. Unbeknownst to her, two shadowy figures entered the room. Before she could react, they attacked her with a weapon designed to mimic an accident, a sudden surge of energy that overloaded her life support systems. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Rachel lay motionless on the floor, her eyes wide open in shock. The Council immediately declared her death an unfortunate mishap caused by faulty equipment. No investigation was launched, and no questions were asked. Back on Earth, however, people refused to believe the official story. Jack Thompson, Rachel's closest friend and the head of Earth's Defense Initiative, felt something was terribly wrong. He had known Rachel since childhood and understood how meticulous she was. She wouldn't make such a careless mistake. Determined to uncover the truth, Jack began digging into Rachel's final days. He accessed her personal logs, which she had sent back to Earth before leaving for the summit. What he found chilled him to the bone. Rachel had uncovered evidence of a sinister plot involving several council members. They planned to strip Earth of its sovereignty and divide its resources among themselves. Worse yet, they saw Rachel as a threat because she had started gathering allies to oppose them. Jack realized that Rachel's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. The Council had sent a clear message. Humanity's presence in galactic affairs would not be tolerated unless they submitted completely. But Jack wasn't ready to give up. As he stared at Rachel's smiling picture on his desk, he made a silent promise. He would expose the truth and ensure that her sacrifice wasn't in vain. Little did he know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change the fate of humanity and the galaxy forever. Jack Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel's death was no accident. He spent long nights in his office, poring over the encrypted logs she had sent back to Earth. Each file revealed more about the shadowy conspiracy she had uncovered. The Galactic Council wasn't just indifferent to humanity. It actively sought to undermine Earth's progress. Rachel had been gathering allies among neutral alien species, hoping to expose the Council's plans. But her efforts had made her a target. As Jack pieced together the evidence, he stumbled upon something even more alarming. Buried deep within Earth's military archives was a project called Eclipse. It was a top-secret initiative that had been running for decades, hidden from public knowledge, and even most government officials. Project Eclipse detailed the construction of a massive fleet of advanced warships, ships far superior to anything currently in use by the Council's forces. These vessels were equipped with cutting-edge technology, including energy shields and weapons capable of destroying entire enemy fleets. The fleet had never been deployed because Earth's leaders feared it would provoke an interstellar war. Humanity was still seen as weak compared to older, more established civilizations. But now, with Rachel gone and Earth's position on the Council in jeopardy, Jack began to see the fleet as humanity's only hope. If the Council thought they could push Earth around without consequences, they needed to think again. Jack knew he couldn't act alone. He reached out to President Laura Bennett, the leader of Earth's Global Assembly. At first, she was hesitant. Deploying the fleet would be a bold move, one that could escalate tensions into full-blown conflict. "We're not ready for this," she said during their meeting. "The Council has centuries of experience. What makes you think we can stand against them?" Jack leaned forward, his voice firm but calm. "Rachel gave her life trying to protect us. She believed in humanity's potential, even when others didn't. If we don't fight back now, we'll lose everything she worked for." He showed her the logs, the blueprints, and the evidence of the Council's betrayal. Slowly, President Bennett began to see the bigger picture. Humanity couldn't afford to remain passive any longer. With the President's approval, Jack began assembling a team to prepare the fleet. Engineers and technicians worked around the clock, bringing the ships out of storage and upgrading their systems. Pilots underwent intense training, learning how to operate the new vessels. Among them was Emily Dawson, a civilian pilot who had joined the military after losing her brother in a previous alien skirmish. Emily was determined to honor his memory, and she threw herself into her training with unmatched dedication. Meanwhile, news of Rachel's death continued to spread across Earth. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with people demanding justice from the Galactic Council. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #JusticeForRachel and #HumanityWillRise. For the first time, humanity felt united, not just as nations, but as a single species standing against oppression. But not everyone agreed with Jack's plan. Some leaders argued that deploying the fleet would be reckless, inviting retaliation from the Council. They urged caution, suggesting that diplomacy might still resolve the situation. Others, however, saw the fleet as a necessary step. "If we show weakness," one senator argued, "they'll crush us without hesitation." The debate came to a head during an emergency session of the Global Assembly. Delegates from every corner of Earth gathered to decide humanity's next move. The room was tense, filled with heated arguments and emotional appeals. Finally, Jack stood up to address the assembly. "This isn't just about Rachel," he said. "It's about who we are as a species. Are we going to let them dictate our future, or are we going to take control?" His words struck a chord. After hours of deliberation, the assembly voted narrowly in favor of activating the fleet. As the decision was announced, a wave of determination swept through the room. Humanity had chosen to fight, not out of hatred, but out of a desire to protect its freedom. Jack left the assembly hall feeling both relief and dread. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but he also knew there was no turning back. The fleet was ready, and so was Earth. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it together. The decision to activate Project Eclipse sent shockwaves through Earth's military and government. For years, the fleet had existed only as a rumor, whispered about in classified meetings, and buried under layers of secrecy. Now, it was being brought to life. Engineers worked tirelessly in massive underground hangars, where the sleek warships had been stored for decades. Each vessel gleamed with advanced technology, energy shields that could deflect plasma fire, railguns capable of piercing alien armor, and engines designed for faster-than-light travel. Colonel Daniel Hayes, one of the fleet's senior commanders, walked among the ships, inspecting every detail. His face was lined with worry, but his eyes burned with determination. "This is our moment," he told his team. "We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Let's make sure we're ready." The pressure was immense. If the fleet failed, humanity would be left defenseless against the Council's overwhelming forces. Admiral Lisa Carter, another key leader, oversaw the training of pilots and crew members. She pushed them hard, knowing that their skills would mean the difference between victory and defeat. Among the recruits was Emily Dawson, who had quickly proven herself to be one of the most talented pilots in the program. Her small fighter jet zipped through simulated combat scenarios, dodging enemy fire and delivering precise strikes. When she landed after a particularly grueling session, Admiral Carter approached her with a rare smile. "You've got guts, Dawson. Keep it up." As the fleet prepared for deployment, tensions on Earth reached a boiling point. Public opinion was divided. Some people supported the decision to fight, seeing it as a necessary step to protect humanity's future. Others feared the consequences of provoking the Galactic Council. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans like "No more war" and "Stand strong." News outlets broadcast heated debates, with experts arguing over whether the fleet could truly stand up to the Council's forces. President Laura Bennett faced immense pressure from all sides. Diplomats urged her to reconsider, warning that the Council might retaliate with devastating force. Military advisors, however, insisted that showing weakness would only embolden the Council further. In private meetings, Jack Thompson reminded her of Rachel Monroe's sacrifice. "We can't back down now," he said. "If we do, Rachel's death will have been for nothing." Despite the chaos, preparations continued at full speed. Supplies were loaded onto the ships, and final checks were performed on every system. Morale among the crew was high, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. Many of them had lost loved ones to alien conflicts in the past, and they saw this mission as a chance to fight back. Others simply wanted to prove that humanity deserved its place in the galaxy. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The fleet gathered at a remote space station orbiting Earth, hidden from prying eyes. Thousands of people gathered near launch sites to watch the ships ascend into the sky. Families held signs reading "Bring them home" and "We believe in you." As the engines roared to life, a hush fell over the crowd. Then, with a deafening boom, the ships shot into space, disappearing into the vast darkness beyond. Jack stood at the command center, watching the fleet vanish from view. He felt a strange mix of pride and anxiety. The fleet was humanity's greatest achievement, but it was also its biggest gamble. If they succeeded, they could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. If they failed, Earth would be left vulnerable to attack. As the ships moved deeper into space, Jack turned to President Bennett. "It's done," he said quietly. "Now we wait." The president nodded, her expression unreadable. Both knew that the hardest part was yet to come. The fleet was heading straight into enemy territory, where the Council's forces awaited them. Whatever happened next, humanity's fate now rested in the hands of those brave men and women aboard the ships. The fleet moved silently through the vast emptiness of space, its ships gliding like shadows toward the Galactic Council's central hub. The journey was tense and quiet, with every crew member focused on their tasks. Pilots ran drills in their cockpits, engineers double-checked systems, and commanders reviewed battle plans. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a mission. It was humanity's chance to prove itself. Emily Dawson sat in her fighter jet, staring out at the endless stars. She thought about her brother, who had died defending Earth during a previous alien attack. "This is for you," she whispered, gripping the controls tightly. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced. She wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of failing. Failing her planet, failing Rachel Monroe, and failing everyone counting on them. When the fleet arrived near the Council's hub, they found themselves vastly outnumbered. Dozens of alien warships surrounded the station, their massive forms bristling with weapons. The sight was intimidating, but Admiral Lisa Carter didn't flinch. "Stay sharp," she said over the comms. "We've trained for this. Stick to the plan." Jack Thompson stood aboard the flagship, watching the scene unfold from the command center. He took a deep breath and activated the fleet's communication system. His voice echoed across the void, reaching not only the Council's forces, but also countless listening ears across the galaxy. "This is Jack Thompson of Earth," he began, his tone calm but firm. "We have come not to conquer, but to demand justice. The murder of Rachel Monroe will not go unanswered. If you refuse to acknowledge your crimes, we will take action." The Council's response came quickly. A reptilian ambassador named Vrax appeared on the view screen, his scales shimmering under the light. His voice tricked with disdain. "You dare challenge us?" he sneered. "Your primitive technology is no match for ours." With that, the Council's ships opened fire, launching waves of plasma bolts toward the human fleet. Chaos erupted as the first shots hit. Explosions lit up the darkness, and alarms blared across the human ships. But the fleet held its ground. The experimental energy shields absorbed much of the damage, protecting the vessels from destruction. Colonel Daniel Hayes barked orders to his captains, directing them to form defensive formations. "Hold the line," he shouted. "Don't let them break through." Emily and the other pilots launched their fighters, weaving through enemy fire with incredible skill. Emily targeted one of the larger alien ships, firing her railgun with precision. The shot pierced the vessel's hull, causing it to explode in a burst of flames. Cheers erupted over the comms as the crew celebrated the small victory, but there was no time to rest. More enemies swarmed toward them, their weapons blazing. Back on the flagship, Jack monitored the battle closely. He noticed something odd. The Council's forces weren't working together as well as they should have. Some ships seemed hesitant to engage, while others acted recklessly. It was clear that the Council's unity was cracking under pressure. Jack seized the opportunity. "Target their weak points," he ordered. "Focus on disrupting their coordination." The strategy worked. By concentrating their attacks on specific areas, the human fleet began to gain the upper hand. Enemy ships retreated in disarray, leaving gaps in their defenses. Jack saw his chance to strike a decisive blow. He turned to Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell, a skilled operative known for his bravery. "Take a team and infiltrate their command center," Jack instructed. "If we can disable their leadership, we might end this before it gets worse." Ryan nodded and assembled a small strike team. They boarded a stealth shuttle and slipped past the enemy lines, heading straight for the Council's station. As they approached, Ryan felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about proving that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The fight raged on, but the tide was slowly turning. For the first time, the Council's forces realized they weren't dealing with a weak opponent. Humanity had teeth, and it wasn't afraid to use them. The strike team, led by Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell, moved swiftly through the Council's command center, their footsteps muffled by the hum of alien machinery. The station was eerily quiet compared to the chaos outside, but Ryan knew better than to let his guard down. Every corner could hide an ambush, every shadow a potential threat. His team consisted of 4 others: 2 engineers, a medic, and a sharpshooter named Clara Brooks. Each had been chosen for their skill and determination. As they crept through dimly lit corridors, Ryan kept his focus on the mission. Their goal was simple: disable the Council's central control system and broadcast evidence of Rachel Monroe's murder to the galaxy. If they succeeded, it would expose the Council's corruption and fracture their unity. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The station was heavily guarded, its defenses designed to repel intruders. They reached a large door marked with alien symbols. One of the engineers, a wiry man named Alex, worked quickly to bypass the lock. "Almost got it," he muttered under his breath. A few tense seconds later, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a room filled with glowing panels and holographic displays. This was the nerve center of the Council's operations. Clara took position near the entrance, her rifle ready to fire at any moment. "Clear," she whispered after scanning the area. Ryan nodded and gestured for the engineers to get to work. They plugged handheld devices into the control panels, uploading a virus that would disrupt the station's systems. Meanwhile, Ryan accessed the security feeds, searching for Vrax, the reptilian ambassador who had mocked humanity during the battle. He found him in a nearby chamber, surrounded by other council members. Ryan clenched his fists as he watched Vrax argue with his allies, clearly frustrated by the human fleet's unexpected resistance. "This is your fault," one of the counselors snapped. "You underestimated them." Ryan turned to Clara. "We need to capture Vrax alive. He's going to confess everything." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't question him. They both knew how risky it was, but they also understood the stakes. While the engineers finished their work, Ryan and Clara moved toward the chamber where Vrax was located. Along the way, they encountered several guards. Clara's aim was deadly accurate, taking down two with quick bursts from her rifle. The rest fell back, giving the team enough time to press forward. When they reached the chamber, Ryan signaled for silence. He peeked inside and saw Vrax pacing angrily. The other council members looked uneasy, their confidence shaken by the battle raging outside. Ryan stepped into the room, his weapon trained on Vrax. "It's over," he said firmly. Vrax froze, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can intimidate me?" He spat. "Do you have any idea what you're dealing with?" Ryan didn't respond. Instead, he activated a recording device and held it up. "Confess," he demanded. "Tell everyone what you did to Rachel Monroe." For a moment, Vrax hesitated. Then, realizing he had no way out, he began to speak. His voice trembled with anger and fear as he admitted to ordering Rachel's assassination. The recording captured every word, leaving no room for denial. Back on the flagship, Jack received the transmission. He wasted no time broadcasting it across the galaxy. Within moments, the truth spread like wildfire. Neutral species who had once supported the Council turned against them, outraged by the betrayal. Even some of the Council's own members distanced themselves from Vrax, seeing him as a liability. The tide of the battle shifted dramatically. With their leadership fractured and morale crumbling, the Council's forces began to falter. Ships retreated, unwilling to fight for a cause that had lost all credibility. Humanity's fleet pressed its advantage, pushing deeper into enemy territory. As the dust settled, Jack allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The mission had been risky, but it had paid off. The Council's grip on the galaxy was weakening, and humanity had proven it could stand up to even the most powerful adversaries. But Jack knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was changing, and Earth's place in it was far from secure. Still, for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Rachel's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. It had sparked something bigger than anyone could have imagined. The battle outside the Council's hub was reaching its peak. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as ships exchanged fire, their weapons tearing through shields and hulls alike. Humanity's fleet fought with everything they had, but the cost was high. Several human vessels were lost, their crews sacrificing themselves to protect the others. The losses weighed heavily on everyone, but there was no time to mourn. The fight wasn't over yet. Back aboard the flagship, Jack Thompson watched the chaos unfold on the main view screen. His heart ached for the fallen, but he couldn't afford to let his emotions take over. Every decision he made now could mean the difference between victory and defeat. He turned to Admiral Lisa Carter, who stood nearby, her face grim but resolute. "How are we holding up?" he asked. "We're stretched thin," she admitted, "but the strike team's success is giving us an edge. The Council's forces are falling apart." Jack nodded. The broadcast of Vrax's confession had spread quickly, shattering the Council's unity. Many alien ships refused to continue fighting, turning away from the battle entirely. Others hesitated, unsure of who to trust. It was exactly what Jack had hoped for. The Council's power was built on fear and control, and exposing their corruption had weakened that foundation. Despite this, some factions remained loyal to the Council and continued to fight fiercely. Vrax himself had fled the command center, trying to escape aboard a small shuttle. Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell and his team pursued him, determined to bring him to justice. They chased the shuttle through the battlefield, dodging enemy fire and weaving between larger ships. "Don't let him get away," Ryan shouted to his pilot as they closed in. The shuttle was fast, but it wasn't designed for combat. A few well-placed shots from Clara's rifle disabled one of its engines, sending it spiraling toward a nearby asteroid field. Ryan's team landed nearby and moved in to capture Vrax. The reptilian ambassador tried to resist, lashing out with claws and brute strength, but he was no match for Ryan and Clara. Together, they subdued him and secured him in restraints. "It's over," Ryan said coldly. "You're done." With Vrax captured, the human fleet gained even more ground. Morale soared among the crew members, who saw their efforts paying off. Pilots like Emily Dawson pushed themselves harder than ever, taking down enemy ships with precision strikes. Her fighter darted through the debris of destroyed vessels, her railgun firing relentlessly. When one of her shots crippled a massive Council cruiser, cheers erupted across the comms. As the Council's remaining forces retreated, Jack issued a final ultimatum. Using the flagship's communication system, he addressed the galaxy once again. "This war ends now," he declared. "Surrender and face justice for your crimes, or continue fighting and risk total annihilation. The choice is yours." His words echoed across the battlefield, reaching both friend and foe. Some Council ships immediately powered down their weapons, signaling their surrender. Others hesitated before following suit. Only a handful refused to back down, but they were quickly overwhelmed by the combined might of humanity's fleet. By the time the dust settled, the Council's forces had been neutralized. Their hub station floated silently in space, its systems disabled and its leaders either captured or scattered. Humanity's fleet regrouped around it, battered but victorious. Cheers broke out aboard every ship as the reality of what they had achieved sank in. Against all odds, they had stood up to the most powerful force in the galaxy. And won. Jack allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He thought about Rachel Monroe and all she had sacrificed to expose the truth. Her courage had inspired them to fight when the odds seemed impossible. Now her legacy would live on, not just in the victory they had won, but in the hope they had given to humanity. Admiral Carter approached him, her expression softening. "We did it," she said simply. Jack nodded, but he knew the work wasn't finished yet. The Council's fall left a power vacuum in the galaxy, and rebuilding trust wouldn't be easy. Still, for the first time in years, humanity had a real chance to shape its own destiny. As the fleet prepared to return home, Jack gazed out at the stars. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but humanity had proven it could hold its own. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy in a state of shock. For centuries, the Galactic Council had ruled with an iron grip, dictating the fates of countless species. Now its leaders were either captured, in hiding, or stripped of their authority. Vrax, the reptilian ambassador who had orchestrated Rachel Monroe's murder, was paraded before the galaxy in a live broadcast. His confession, recorded during the strike team's mission, played on every communication channel, exposing the Council's corruption to billions. Neutral alien species, once intimidated by the Council's power, began speaking out. Some condemned the atrocities committed under the Council's watch, while others offered their support to humanity. It was clear that the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The fall of the Council created a vacuum, and Earth found itself at the center of attention, both as a symbol of resistance and as a potential leader. Back on the flagship, Jack Thompson worked tirelessly to ensure the transition would be peaceful. He knew that defeating the Council wasn't enough. They needed to build something better in its place. President Laura Bennett joined him via hologram, her face showing both pride and concern. "We've won the battle," she said, "but we can't let this moment slip away. If we don't act now, someone else will fill the void." Jack agreed. He called for a meeting with representatives from neutral alien factions who had turned against the Council during the conflict. The discussions were tense but productive. Many species admitted they had feared standing up to the Council before, but humanity's bravery had inspired them to reconsider. Together, they drafted plans for a new governing body, one that would include equal representation for all civilizations, not just the most powerful ones. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell and his team returned to the fleet with Thrax in custody. The reptilian ambassador remained defiant, even as he faced judgment for his crimes. "You think this changes anything?" he sneered at Jack during an interrogation. "The galaxy is chaos without us. You'll see. You're not ready for what comes next." Jack didn't respond. He knew Thrax was trying to provoke him, but he also understood the truth behind the words. Rebuilding trust and establishing order wouldn't be easy. Still, humanity had taken the first step toward creating a fairer system, and that gave Jack hope. On Earth, news of the victory sparked celebrations around the globe. Cities lit up with fireworks, and crowds gathered in public squares, chanting Rachel Monroe's name. She had become a symbol of courage and justice, her sacrifice reminding everyone of the cost of freedom. Statues were erected in her honor, and schools began teaching her story as part of history lessons. But amidst the joy, there was also mourning. Families grieved for loved ones lost during the battle, and wounded soldiers filled hospitals across the planet. Emily Dawson visited one such hospital after returning home, seeking out the families of pilots who hadn't made it back. "They gave everything so we could win," she told them, her voice trembling with emotion. "We owe it to them to keep moving forward." As weeks passed, the new governing body began to take shape. Representatives from dozens of species came together to draft a charter based on cooperation and mutual respect. Humanity played a key role in these negotiations, earning recognition as a leader among equals rather than a subordinate newcomer. Jack often found himself addressing the assembly, his calm demeanor helping bridge gaps between differing viewpoints. Still, challenges remained. Not all alien factions supported the changes, and rumors of rebellions began to surface. Some believed the Council's old ways were necessary to maintain order, while others saw the shift as an opportunity to seize power for themselves. Jack knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he refused to give up. Humanity had proven it could stand strong, and he was determined to honor Rachel's memory by building a brighter future. As he looked out at the stars one night, Jack felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but humanity had shown it could rise to the challenge. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and this time, they wouldn't have to fight alone. The new governing body, named the Galactic Alliance, officially convened 6 months after the fall of the Galactic Council. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered on a neutral planet chosen for its central location and peaceful history. Humanity played a key role in shaping the Alliance's foundation, with Jack Thompson often taking the lead in negotiations. The charter they drafted emphasized equality, cooperation, and justice, principles that Rachel Monroe had fought for until her final days. Rachel's legacy loomed large over the proceedings. Her name was mentioned in nearly every speech, and her story became a cornerstone of the Alliance's mission. A monument was erected in her honor outside the Assembly Hall, featuring an inscription that read, "For courage in the face of injustice and hope in the shadow of despair." Delegates from across the galaxy visited it daily, paying their respects to the woman who had sparked a revolution. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal, but not entirely. The war had changed people. Families mourned those lost in battle, but they also celebrated the bravery of the soldiers and pilots who had risked everything. Emily Dawson became a symbol of resilience, traveling around the world to share her experiences. She spoke about her brother, who had died defending humanity, and how his memory drove her to join the fight. "We didn't win because we were stronger," she told crowds. "We won because we stood together." Jack remained deeply involved in the Alliance's work, but he made time to reflect on what had been achieved. Late one evening, as he walked through the gardens near the assembly hall, he thought about Rachel. He remembered her determination, her belief that humanity deserved a place among the stars. "You did it, Rachel," he whispered to himself. "You showed us the way." Despite the progress, challenges lingered. Some factions loyal to the old council refused to accept the new order, launching sporadic attacks against Alliance ships and outposts. These rebels saw the Alliance as weak and disorganized, hoping to restore the Council's authoritarian rule. Jack knew it would take time to root them out, but he was confident they could be stopped. The unity forged during the war gave the Alliance strength, and more species joined its ranks each day. Admiral Lisa Carter took charge of defending the Alliance's borders, ensuring that no threat went unchecked. Her fleet patrolled distant regions of space, maintaining peace and protecting vulnerable planets. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell worked closely with intelligence operatives to track down remaining Council loyalists. Vrax, still imprisoned, occasionally provided information in exchange for leniency, though his motives were always suspect. On Earth, President Laura Bennett announced plans to rebuild and expand Project Eclipse, not as a weapon, but as a deterrent. The advanced fleet would serve as a reminder that humanity could defend itself while contributing to the safety of the galaxy. Schools introduced programs teaching students about diplomacy and interstellar relations, preparing future generations to play active roles in the Alliance. As years passed, the scars of the war began to heal. Humanity's position in the galaxy solidified, earning respect and admiration from former adversaries. Neutral species once wary of humans now sought partnerships, recognizing their potential as allies. Trade routes reopened, cultural exchanges flourished, and scientific advancements accelerated thanks to shared knowledge. One evening, Jack stood aboard a newly commissioned ship, gazing out at the stars. The vessel bore Rachel's name, a tribute to her sacrifice and vision. Around him, young officers bustled with energy, ready to explore uncharted systems and forge new connections. For the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of peace. The galaxy was far from perfect, but it was moving in the right direction. Rachel's dream of a united galaxy hadn't come easily, but it had come true. Humanity had proven it could rise above fear and prejudice, standing shoulder to shoulder with others as equals. As Jack watched the ship's engines ignite, carrying its crew toward the unknown, he smiled. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity and the galaxy would face them together.